Hi everyone. In my last video, I started making the elements for my mixed media ATCs. So in that video, I had made these little South America maps, some ATC cards from manila folders. I had cut out little hummingbirds. I took this photo myself in Mindo, Ecuador. And then I'll be painting on those with these Lindys Stamp Gang Magical Micas. You can see they have that iridescent look that the actual hummingbirds have. I also cut out some little stamps. Now, when I initially did them, I did it with the border, but after I did a test run with some of these, I decided to go smaller. So I cut off that extra edging that's on this border and just cut it down to this brown border because I wanted the hummingbird to be able to be focused on more. So I decided to use this brad set that I had been hoarding forever because the colors were very similar to that of the hummingbirds here. And there was a tip from a lady I follow on YouTube with mixed media. Her name is Marta with Moremi's Small Art, and her recommendation is when you have a product line like this, they've already figured out colors very well for you. So work with the colors that are in that line so that it feels like everything is cohesive with your project. So I've taken that advice and I've picked up various embossing powders, gelatos, magical micas that are all within the same color scheme as the brads that I'm working with for this project. It also happens to turn out that while I was in the process of making these, she released a challenge. Let me find the name of that challenge. It's called 52 Cafe Cards, and this particular challenge is the letter H, hummingbirds and hearts. So that was very fitting. I feel kind of limited with the design that I've made as far as this one is specifically just hummingbirds, but after I finish these 7, my next one, I'm going to go ahead and join her challenge and do the hummingbirds with hearts. So stay tuned for that one next. But let's first do this one. I want to make sure to use up these 7 little maps that I had made up of South America because it features Ecuador right here. And which interestingly, this is the equator. So that's why Ecuador is named as it is. I'm sorry, my lighting is awful today. It's acting like it's going to rain outside, but it hasn't yet. This line right here is the equator, and that's where Ecuador is named after. So just a little fun fact there. Okay, so I'm just going to fast forward and show you different clips of doing this mixed media background, and I'll cut in and out to let you know what products I'm actually using. So for my first step on these, I added this clear gesso. I wanted to keep the true color of the manila folder, so I didn't want to paint it with white. So I just put the clear gesso on it so that I can overlay my gelatos. I've been using 3 colors for the background. I only do the edge. I'm not going to worry about the center so much since that is completely covered with my other ephemera. Between the tags that I'm putting on it and the map, I don't need to worry about full coverage. If you're freaking out about my desk, don't worry about it. This is actually a glass top. So all I do to clean it up when I'm finished is I just use like those little facial pads and some alcohol. So just some regular rubbing alcohol that you get at the pharmacy or at Walmart or whatever. So all I do is put that on my pad and it wipes right off of here. Super easy cleanup again. All right, so now I'm gonna color all these backgrounds, and then I'm going to add these watercolor tags that were by Recollections. I got these at Michael's. I think the collection is called Watercolor. And those are gonna be the next layer on here. I'll add that with some of this Aleene's tacky glue. And then I'm going to layer my South America map on top of that. So let me just step you through it here, and then I'll do a fast forward video. I'm going to be tearing portions of the map so that more of that tag will show through and things like that. And then I'll attach this map on here with my Winsor Newton acrylic matte medium. So that's how I will get that all on there. So while those pieces dry, I'll just show you real quickly how I clean this. Again, it's just a glass top. So all I do is just drizzle a little bit of alcohol directly on my surface. Take a facial cleansing pad. And it comes right off. So you can see with just a couple of squirts of my alcohol and these little facial sponges, it cleans right up very easily. Now, the only reason why I had to use that one is because that was pretty thick clear gesso plus matte medium, so it was pretty thick what I had on my surface. Usually I only have to use one of these little alcohol prep pads. It'll just come right up if it's something that I haven't used the heat gun on and put it on here. But either way, it cleans up easy and I don't have to keep replacing mats all the time. To be honest, I forgot to bring a mat with me when I moved here, a craft sheet, and I was a little nervous about that, but I did find they have several cooking stores here that have the silicone mats. And they weren't that expensive, but then I had considered getting a glass top, and I remember I had worked on glass years ago with scrapbooking, so that just worked fine. So while those backgrounds are drying, I want them to dry completely without bubbling, so I'm not using the heat gun on it too much. Since I have gesso and matte medium on here, I don't want these to bubble, so I'm going to set them aside to dry before I do the stamping with embossing powder. Otherwise the embossing powder is going to stick everywhere on this surface. So while that's drying, I'll go ahead and show you how I've been hand painting these little hummingbirds. So this is an actual photo of a hummingbird I took in Mindo, Ecuador, and then I used an app on my phone and converted it to look like an oil painting. That way it's a little bit easier for me to figure out how to paint on top of it with my Magical Micas. So what I did was I swatched out some Magical Micas to see which ones would be a pretty good fit for the colors on the bird. Now this gold streak right here is not part of the bird, that's a leaf. So I'm going to just paint over that and treat it as part of the wing. And then, so these three here are the closest colors that I found, and they work very well. If you want to know the names, this first one, this darkest teal color, is called Tainted Love Teal. Again, these are Magical Micas. They're usually sold in sets of 5 by Lindys Stamp Gang, so I'll link them down below. The next color has always been one of my favorites. This is like the first set I ever bought from them. It's called Tibetan Poppy Teal. This next one is a really pretty iridescent blue, and that one is called Hydrangea Blue. Again, this is one of the originals that I first bought. I think their packaging, yeah, their packaging has changed. I think their packaging looks like this now. This is one of the newer ones. So this silver right here is called Steel Shimmer. So that's the silver. And then I decided to add a white belly. Let me see if I have it. No, I haven't painted it on this one yet. This one is called Ghostly Gargoyle White. And this one is one of their older sets as well. So all I do is I just use my Kuretake water brush. I think this one is the fine tip, and I just put a little bit in the lid, and then I just start working on that portion of the body that I'm working on. Make sure that you don't just dip into one color after another without cleaning the tip of your brush, or you're going to cross-contaminate and end up with a totally different shade within your bottles. So it's very important either to use different brushes or to make sure to clean your tip very well before going on to another color. So how I prevent doing that when I'm working in an assembly line like this is I'm going to work with one color at a time. I'm going to do the white belly on all of these first, and then I'll go in and do one color at a time so that I don't cross-contaminate my brush. But all the bellies on these are white. Here's one that's actually finished. And so it has the teals and the greens and the whites. So the next color I'm going to work on is the one for the feathers, the darkest of the feathers. And I do go ahead and add some of that steel shimmer also to the beak just to make it a little bit shiny. So I'll work on that color next. Okay, so now that the bird is done and the background is dry, I want the image of the bird to be able to show a little bit more off of the map itself. So I'm going to add some embossing powder. This one is by Lindys Stamp Gang. It's two-toned. It's called Angel Wings Peacock. It's actually almost like a clear embossing powder, but then it'll dry with this shimmery effect here. So to deepen the color, to make sure I keep that tone, I'm going to use a dark ink. This one is mixed media by Donna Salazar Designs. I've just had these for a long time. I don't even think they're made anymore, but they've stayed juicy for years. So I placed my bird here as a guideline because I'm just going to use this stamp here to put an area where the beak is, as well as an area where the twigs are. And then I'm going to use this Amy Tangerine stamp. I'm only going to use the little arrows to highlight the word South America. So I'm going to stamp above it and below it, add the embossing powder, and then we'll have some contrast here. So today, despite the rain outside, I was able to finish my first 7 ATCs that will have our contact information on the back to give to our friends. You'll notice that this one's a little bit different. This was actually the first one I did, and instead of using the Angel Wings Peacock clear embossing powder, I used the Midnight Copper Obsidian. And so it has more of a grungy, dark look to it than the rest of them. But I figured since these were going to friends that aren't necessarily crafters, they might not care for the grungy look as much. So I went ahead and decided to go with the brighter. Another thing I had done was on the tag, I had distressed it a little bit and blended it into the background. But I noticed that the belly of the bird really popped out and showed more than I wanted it to. So by leaving the background tag white, it helps the bird's stomach not stand out so much. That's just a feature of that particular bird, and it looks really pretty. So I'm really happy with how these 7 turned out, and I'm going to change up the design for my next ones. I might use a different hummingbird that I took a photo of that's also sitting on a tree branch. So hopefully this helped you see how you can go from the design process on your digital machines, whether that be the Silhouette or the Cricut, and then convert those into ephemera that you need for your mixed media ATCs. Thanks for watching.